Going to get started here, everybody. So first off, I want to thank everyone for coming today. This is our exec job search with gratitude. We were waiting to find a proper topic, but near Thanksgiving, I thought that would be appropriate. When you're doing your job search, it can definitely be difficult to have gratitude when everything seems to be going negatively. So trying to create some positive energy to help you, as well as give you some actionable advice today. So we have our three speakers. Our first speaker will be Greg Williams. He's known as the master negotiator and body language expert. He's a Harvard-trained professional with over 30 years experience in negotiation and body language. He's delivered training and keynotes in over 19 countries, helping individuals enhance their value, achieve better deals. A Forbes-cited thought leader and accomplished author, Greg has written 7 books on negotiation and body language. He's also part of the Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches, a group of elite coaches for global leaders and public figures. And his expertise has earned him a Global CXO Award, numerous TV appearances on major U.S. and international networks, and roles as a body language consultant for Hollywood films and TV shows. Greg's guiding principle is you're always negotiating. Our second speaker today is Melissa Grabiner. Nearly 3 decades of experience in both human resources and recruiting. Melissa Grabiner is a sought-after strategist and expert in talent acquisition. On LinkedIn, Melissa is considered a thought leader, having over 400,000 followers, and she's been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, LinkedIn, MarketWatch, Fast Company, Indeed Business, and been featured twice on Times Square billboard in New York City. Additionally, Melissa has been ranked as number 2 female LinkedIn creator worldwide and is recognized by LinkedIn's influencer program as a top voice for both recruiting and job-seeking strategies. And our third speaker today is Eric Nerhlich. Sorry if I mispronounced it. It's an executive coach who helps leaders have more impact by drawing on his 25 years experience in the tech industry. He loves to identify and challenge mindsets and habits that hold people back for their next level of leadership. Before becoming a coach, Eric spent 10 years as an engineer and product manager across several startups before joining Google and eventually leading business strategy and operations for the Google Search Ads team for 6 years as chief of staff. He published his first book in 2023, You Have a Choice: Beyond Hard Work to Meaningful Impact, which he wrote to share the principles and mindsets that have helped him and his clients with a wider audience. So starting off today, we'll be having a conversation with Greg about how to negotiate your salary in your next job interview that you're going to have coming up. So we decided to do a little bit of a conversational interview style with Greg here. I have a whole bunch of questions I've prepared. We're going to go through these questions. And of course, if you have your own audience questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Once we get through our initial piece here, we'll see if we can hit some of your audience questions as well. So hi, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, John. I'm looking forward to actually presenting some very insightful information that all of those that are with us today will be able to use to ensure that they get better opportunities as they move forward into their careers.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I really enjoyed our talk we had last time as well. It made me think about some things that you wouldn't think about when you're going to negotiate. You're like, oh, I didn't think about body language, or things that like you should keep top of mind that would help you. So just to start off, what should you do to prepare before you going into your salary negotiation with, the CEO is going to meet with you, you expect an offer. What do I do to prepare?
Well, first,
Preparation is always important, right?
preparation is always important, but what you prepare for is even more important. For example, what is the real value add that CEO sees in you? That's something you should know before you actually enter into the engagement with that individual. Because suppose you present yourself as this individual that can come in and just add $5 trillion to the bottom line instantly. Okay, sounds good, right? Well, suppose the CEO is really looking for someone that can come in and nurture, let's say, those staff members that are below in the mid-level management level, such that they get a chance to gain insights in order to take over the company in X amount of years or something of that nature. Now, I'm using that as a drastic insight as far as an example is concerned, because it does shape, again, your perspective has to match what the CEO is looking for from a value perspective. Okay, so let's say you've done your due diligence, which is something that you should have done anyway, and you know what the match is. Let's look at some of the body language cues. I love to watch people as they go into thought mode or things of that nature. And see, then you drop it real fast
Yeah.
because that can give you some additional insight as to exactly what thoughts may be occurring in their mind. And hypothetically, let's say you said something that did not necessarily match what you thought would be what that CEO expected from you, and you saw the CEO go into thought mode or something of that nature, you could actually pause and say, how does that sound to you? And the CEO would give you feedback from which you could readjust your presentation. So not only being prepared in order to meet the expectations of the value proposition you present is something that you should be aware of. Once you're actually speaking, you should be very cognizant of the body language signals you receive from the CEO to assess to what degree what you're saying is landing in a positive manner.
So what should we be looking for from like a body language standpoint? Because not everyone is really good at that. They can't read people well. I mean, not everyone's good at doing that, right?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to push back on the perspective that everybody is not good at reading body language. People are much better than they think they are. And the reason I
Okay.
say that, John, is because we intuitively pick up body language signals that are emitted by people every day. Oh, something didn't feel right in that exchange. Well, you intuitively picked up a signal that allowed you to sense that at a subliminal level. Now, here's the point. Being aware that you are picking up signals is the way to be more perceptive about the signals that you're actually picking up. That is all said to say, again, be mindful of someone when they touch their face. The body always wants to stay in a state of comfort. And if the body is out of that state, it will do something to try and put itself back into that state. So if somebody's smiling and laughing with you, the body is in a state of comfort. If, on the other hand, they're frowning, it's because of something that they feel is of displeasure in the environment. So those are just little signals that you can pick up on. Someone says, "That's my best offer," and they're leaning back away from you as they're speaking to you, they're indicating through the body language, no, I'm not exactly aligned. My body is not aligned with that particular statement that I'm making. If that is the case, again, that's a signal that something is awry. Anytime the body is out of sync with the verbiage, the words being spoken, take note of it. Someone says, "I don't like you." Now, that can be an aggressive sign. You notice how I looked more into the camera, implicating that I was moving closer to someone. I don't like you. That could be a strong sense of someone's displeasure with you. But how about if they said, I don't like you. I don't like you. I don't like you. I don't like. I mean, I did that multiple times to show the different ways that one can communicate a signal. And if you're unsure about what you're sensing per what someone is saying, ask them about it. Well, I'm not really getting a good sense that I understand everything that you're communicating. Can you please paraphrase it for me? Notice the tonality that I actually used also to ask that question. So there are a lot of components that go into not only nonverbal cues themselves, but at the same time being much more aware of the environment that you're in for what's being said and done in the environment.
Okay. So what would be the best way to ask about your own salary expectations without sounding like confrontational or you know,
Well, first, again, you know what you want. You already know what you want. You should have some expectations per what the salary range may be in that particular organization, in that particular industry for, let's say, a salary of someone with your expertise. You already have that in mind. You then should be able to set brackets upon what you want, what you might get, be it high or low, and what you will definitely not accept. One thing I love to do is to ask in the form of an assumptive question. Well, John, you and I know that I have the value that you're looking for, right? So John says yes. He's shaking
yeah.
he's nodding his head. Yes. And I would say, so John, I just naturally assume then that our compensation is going to be amenable for both of us, correct? Now you notice what I'm doing with the body language. I'm leading you non-verbally with
Yeah.
nodding my head, and then I would say, and exactly what is that range, John? And so
Yeah.
the point of the matter is, I will try my best in different ways to get you to give me a range to assess to what degree I am within the ballpark of your expectations. Now, suppose you don't want to give me a range. Suppose you want, I mean, a lot of CEOs are very savvy when it comes to negotiations. So therefore, suppose you really don't want to give me a range. And you say, well, Greg, what are you expecting? And I would come back with a value add proposition, having done my homework, knowing what you're looking for. So, John, hypothetically, tell me what you might be looking for in a CEO that you were about to hire.
Okay.
No,
Well,
I'm saying do it real in real time. Anything, throw out anything.
yeah, I mean someone that can get the job done, you know.
Well, John, exactly what does get the job done mean?
Well, I mean we got numbers to hit, so
And when one hits the numbers, what type of compensation would you value for that individual?
oh, it's all negotiable.
And so exactly what does that mean? Okay, we can pause there. But you see how I'm digging, digging, digging. Not only that,
Mhm.
here's something to always remember. The person asking questions, to the degree that they're getting answers to those questions, is actually leading the negotiation at that particular point and time. Now, notice something else that I'm doing with my body language right now. The fingers are such that they're pointed, touching one another. That emphasizes a point. I'm also speaking on a beat. When people speak at a beat to which others might dance to, that subliminally becomes even more of a powerful incentive to follow that individual. So that's yet something else to keep in mind about presenting yourself from a nonverbal verbal perspective.
So how do I respond though when people are gonna ask me what my current salary is? Because that's a good way to lowball someone. You're like, oh, you're only making so much now, so we're gonna offer you just a little bit more, right? Rather than what the job pays.
Well, John, thank you for asking the question about my prior salary. Can you tell me why that's of interest to you? because you're going to give me something that I will be able to use to possibly reposition myself.
Yeah, they would
And
probably say something like, "Well, we want to make sure you're happy, right? But that's more of we want to pay you just a little bit more than what you're making, and not to market, you know?"
okay, and I would use that as a point to inject humor into the situation.
Yeah.
John, knowing that I'm going to do a great job, why would you only want to pay me a little bit more?
Hmm.
And I might even say, compensate me just a little bit more. Verbiage in this particular situation would also play subliminally into the way in which we move the conversation. Because if I understand, John, if I understand you right, what you're attempting to say is you think I'm only of a little more value based on the interactions we've had and the chance you've had to see exactly what I can do for your organization? Is that what you're saying? Now, John, that's a slight defensive move to put someone off kilter ever so slightly. Be careful with that because I can use it as a red herring, knowing as a negotiation expert how to pull somebody back over to the other side. It's a way to inject in a slight bit of guilt into the conversation also. But again, be careful with it because you must be able, when you use it in a manner with an individual that you know will respond more favorably to having sensed some form of guilt. And how do you discern that? You observe the person's body language as you're actually interacting with them. And therefore, if you say something along the lines of what I said a moment ago to inject guilt into the situation, the person might say, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not trying to say that." Now, if that happens right away, you know that you have that individual in your grasp. So then I toss the question back to that individual. So, what value do you think I would be worth in this particular situation to your organization? Again, I'm going to try my darndest to get that individual to give me their perspective of a range of salaries because in my back pocket, I also know that I have other options to use in the form of, well, if you want to start with a compensation package of, let's say, $1 million, compensation package of $1 million, let's say I get 5 weeks off to do work on special projects or whatever else it is that I wish to do. Now, I might toss that up as a red herring. No, well, we can't do that. Well, how about if you add another $50,000 as a sign-on bonus or whatever be the case? The point is, you keep red herrings in your pocket. A red herring is something that may have value to the other party that has little value to you that you can toss out as possibly a distraction, possibly something that you can use as a chit if you, let's say, concede on and allow that other individual to say, give you more of what it is that you're really seeking. Know what you want before you go in there. Know at what points and times you'll compromise on what it is that you want. And again, you can use the takeaway. Well, John, it seems like this may not be as good a fit as I thought it was going to be for the two of us. Are you getting that same sense? So suppose John says, no, no, not at all. Oh, well, give me your perspective then, John. Suppose John says, yes, I am getting that sense. Okay, well, John, how can we get back on track? Again, before you enter into that situation, you want to have a whole plan of how you are going to negotiate in it. You also want to have mile markers that indicate where you should be at any one particular point in time in your plan per where you thought you would be. As you're engaging, you then mark off where you thought you would be versus where you are and what strategies you've used to get there versus how you're going to use different tactics to get back on track. So it's a whole planning process that one must engage in to successfully negotiate.
So what would you do if you received a lower job offer than you expect, right? Because that usually will happen in this market right now. We're getting lower offers in general.
How low of an offer? Again, remember I said you need to bracket what you want what you expect, what you will not accept. And when I say what you expect, suppose you're only looking for $1 million and you're offered 1.5 million instead. And you're going, whoa, that is really great. Suppose, again, using the same scenario, your CEO says, Greg, I can offer you 1.5 million to start. And you, on the other hand, was only looking for a million. You do not want to go, whoa, okie dokie, I'll sign that. I'll sign up for that. You play it cool, and it's like 1.5, and you wait until forever. Do not say another word after that, and wait to hear a response. Let's use the reverse side of that. You're at 1 million asking. You get 7.5 or 750,000. Okay, that is the low end of which I would accept an offer. That's when you might start using the red herrings to get that offer up a little bit more. But if it's at 650,000, you might really come out and say, I can't deal with that number. And say it emphatically if that's really what you feel as though is your true walk away point or something that you can't deal with. State it verbally and state it through your body. I can't deal with that number. And don't say another word after that. Wait and see because you've tossed the ball back to the CEO. Don't then come back with, but if at 650,000, because again, at that point, you start negotiating against yourself. And when you sense or find or see someone negotiating against themselves, let them have at it. Don't interrupt them at all, at all.
So how do you, get a counter offer without risking the whole thing getting thrown out or being rescinded? People are worried of losing the opportunity a lot of times. That's why they're afraid to negotiate.
First of all, my motto is you're always negotiating.
Mhm.
Never fear to negotiate. If you know your self-value, every opportunity that knocks on the door will not be a viable one for you. Understand that before you go into the negotiation. Set your expectations such that you do not feel as though, oh, I have to have this deal. I have to have this job. I have to, because you've already created a mindset that said, okay, I'm going to concede on this, that, and the other, whether you realize it or not. So do not do that at all. And okay, I understand some situations with some individuals may be more dire than with others, but again, understand there's a sense of value that the CEO has already seen in you. If you go in and start making one concession after another, what you've done is really started to lower the expectations in that CEO's mind of what you may do in the future if they happen to bring you into the organization. Thus, you're always negotiating. That which influences you, or that which you do today, influences your situations and tomorrow's potential opportunities. So, again, how do you fraught or offset running the risk? One thing you can say is, if you want to be just open and honest, if you want to display your hand up front, you could actually say, John, I'm looking for at least $1 million in the form of some type of package. Now, please tell me exactly what your thoughts are. And John says, hey, I'm only looking for 650. John, we have a disconnect. And I'm not saying another word after that. John, we have a disconnect. And I'll let you tell me what you perceive the disconnect as being, because that will give me input from which to continue our conversation. And suppose John says, okay, well, Greg, I agree with you. We have a disconnect. Okay, so what? Next. Some will, some won't. So what next? You're off to the next opportunity whenever, wherever it might be.
Okay, that's really good. And so, what would you say to someone? Because we have several executives in our network that have been out of work for, going on 9 months to a year, where they get a job offer, they got to take it, right? How do you negotiate when you've been unemployed for so long and you finally got an offer coming up? How do you go and negotiate that? Because it's hard to hide your feelings,
Is it?
sometimes.
Is it?
For some people, yes.
Okay. Here's the point to that, and then I'll get to your question. We all play a character in life at different points, at different times, every day in our life. So, first of all, you want to project confidence. I don't care what it is that you're feeling on the inside. You want to project that sense of confidence of, hey, I'm the right person for this, and you know it, right? That's the type of mindset you want to go in with. Psych yourself up before you go in, because again, you don't want to present yourself as, oh, I have to have this position. I have to have whatever the offer will be, no matter what it is. That being aside, if you truly are in such a position, and now let's use that same $1 million figure and drop it down to 500,000, and that's the best offer that's on the table, and for whatever reason you must take it, still act with confidence as though you are worthy of much more, and you will graciously accept the $500,000 starting position with options too, and you add all kinds of additional options to get up to the $1 million point that you were initially looking for. Why? Because you then set future expectations per how you wish to be compensated for graciously accepting a lower salary starting point at that particular point in time. Remember, you're always negotiating. So if you accept the 500,000 and oh, I'm so humble. Thank you so much. You don't know how long I've been out of work. I really, no. You're just setting yourself up to stay at that $500,000 level longer than you otherwise would have. Find out how you might add additional value. Find out how you might be compensated for doing different things such that the company perceives you as being more valuable.
No, sounds good. We're just going to go here to audience questions as well, just for due to time. Some of these questions I think would be, I guess here's one that would be something applicable. Let's say there's different currencies they're able to pay you in, either US or Canadian, and you don't want to accept a certain currency, you want to accept other currency because it would be more aligned for you. How would you negotiate? I would consider it a perk, right? Perks or currencies or vacation. How do you negotiate sort of those ancillary things in the offer when it's not the main piece? The main nugget is, of course, your salary, but then all the perks. How do you leverage for perks and so on?
Well, how do you leverage for perks depends upon whom is actually looking at that particular item as a perk. Seriously, because
Mhm.
if by chance you're looking at being compensated in a different salary form than, let's say, from Canadian to the US or any other currency throughout the world, that really can be a benefit to you if you're working in, let's say, Canada and you wish to be compensated in US dollars. If by chance the dollar is more valued than the Canadian dollar, which happens to be the case right now, if I remember correctly. So that's something that you can look at, and you can actually say, as one of your potential red herrings, how about if I'm compensated in such and such a currency? Well, no, we can't do that. Well, instead of 500,000, then how about if we raise the salary to what do you think would be equitable? And I tossed that question back to that individual. Suppose the individual says 750. Now, according to what we were looking for, remember 750 was our potentially walk away point with the initial scenario that I created. Now you're back to that 750 range, and then you might even say, and what else might we do? Because you don't know if that CEO has more to give unless you ask. And the way you ask in that particular situation is how you position yourself with the ask. And what else might we be able to do? You want to get them to put as much on the table as they possibly can, and at the same time, understanding that you have some additional needs that you may want to actually sweeten the pot that may not cost them as much as the give to you would be.
Yeah, well, sounds good. I think we're due to time, we're going to have to wrap it up here, but there's definitely more resources that you provide on your website and your books and so on to continue on learning, right?
Oh, definitely so. People can reach me at, if they wish to do so via email, at Greg, that's Greg, at master, Master, negotiator, Negotiator.com. They can also go to my website, which is themasternegotiator.com. And I love to give away free stuff. So there are all kinds of tips on the site. Look at the blog posts that I've written. And if I could be of assistance to anyone, just have them contact you, John, and ask for me.
Sounds good, Greg. I appreciate it. Some good tips today. Some things to think about for sure when we're getting our offers out. So thank you,
Thank
Greg.
you. Hmm.
All right, we're gonna pass the microphone here to Melissa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, how you doing?
Hi there. Um, okay, John, would you like me to talk about the feeling gratitude while job searching or finding your dream job?
The gratitude and job search would be great for sure.
Sure. Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very honored to be able to speak to all of you. Just from my own personal experience, I have been laid off twice in the last 5 years. I was with a company for 18 years, and they moved my position to the East Coast, and I wasn't looking to make a move, and so I ended up leaving. And then I took another job, and then was laid off from there 18 months later. So I absolutely understand what it's like going through a job search. And one of the things that really struck with me during this time was always remembering how important it is to feel gratitude. I know that can be challenging, especially when you're dealing with uncertainty or disappointment. But what I found is that when you cultivate gratitude during that time, it can actually help you stay positive, you can stay grounded and motivated. And some of the strategies that I used is focusing on what I have, right? So I would always come back to, I have a great marriage, I have two beautiful sons, I have my health and my everyone in my family is healthy. And so it was focusing on all the positives in my life. And then I also never lost sight of the strengths. So even though I would get rejected and sometimes that would bring me down, I would always take time to reflect on my skills and my experience and the qualities that made me a strong candidate. So instead of me focusing on what was missing or what didn't work out, I was always keeping in mind of what I was able to bring to the table to any company that I felt would be lucky enough to have me. And I think when you're going through a job search, rejection is definitely part of the process. All candidates get rejected, but it's about knowing your value and having the mindset that if you do get rejected, it's really the company's loss as well. And then I always leaned on my support system. So I would lean on my parents and my siblings and my children and my husband. I had a couple mentors as well. And so these were individuals who supported me during my job search. And it made me feel grateful that I had people in my life that really cared about me and wanted me to succeed. And even times where I would vent and get really upset and get really down, after having these conversations, it always made me feel much better. And I also have always had a very strong professional network. And thinking back to the gratefulness that I felt for all of my professional connections that I have really strengthened over the years. And this kind of goes back to networking. And I always, when I coach my job seekers, I always tell them that, networking is definitely the best way to find a job. And part of the reason why networking is such a great thing is it's not only how people can help you find a new position, but it's about creating those relationships that really can help you grow professionally and personally. And my mind always raced back to the word resilience. So I know job searching can sometimes feel like this never-ending cycle of rejection, or you're almost like a hamster on a wheel and the wheel keeps going around and around. In the moments where you're starting to feel that way, it's important to remind yourself that you're doing your best and showing resilience by continuing to push forward, knowing that every day is a new day with new opportunities. And so having that gratitude for perseverance, I think, is incredibly vital. And showing yourself compassion, being kind to yourself, recognizing that it's normal to feel frustrated, it's normal to feel discouraged, it's normal to feel sad. So practicing self-compassion really helped me in staying grounded and acknowledging the hard work that I was putting in to my job search up until that point. And I'm a yoga instructor, and so what really helped me also was being grateful for the ability to teach yoga, practice my mindfulness, living in the present. I didn't do a lot of dwelling on the past and think about all of the rejections that I had. It was more about thinking towards the future and practicing that mindfulness along the way. And then also, I think it's, just taking care of your well-being. I understand when you lose a job, your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health can suffer. But taking care of your body through exercise, eating well, getting enough rest, that always helped it allowed me to stay mentally and emotionally strong during my job search process. And it's important too to be grateful for what your body's able to do and the energy that it gives. And I think to me that was one of the biggest takeaways is just being grateful for my health and just my emotional well-being. And then I would also say to use this time to, continuously assess your skills and strengths. So understanding your own strengths and skill set is, I think, key to identifying the type of job that would be a good fit for you. And so what I would do when I was looking for a job is I would keep a running list of all of my both soft skills and hard skills. And then I would seek feedback. So I would seek feedback from my former colleagues, from the few mentors that I had, which allowed me to really think about the strengths that I was feeling about myself, but what do other people feel are my strengths as well? And I think oftentimes when you hear about other people seeing the abilities in you that you may not always fully recognize in yourself, I think that could be a huge confidence booster. And then the other thing I would say is, um, and I think this is for anyone on the call, just in general job search, is just make sure that your resume and LinkedIn profile are tailored to the jobs that you're looking for. Build your personal brand. One of the best things that I've ever done personally was build my own personal brand on LinkedIn. And so at the time I had my second layoff, I was in a much better position to find a new job because I built such a strong brand and had so many more connections and friends through the LinkedIn platform that I met. And then I would also say embrace the journey, right? So finding your dream job isn't necessarily always about just landing the right position. It's about thinking through what you've learned along the way, and it's about growing and adapting yourself along the way as well. Be open to the twists and turns. Job searching is like a roller coaster. You'll have good days, you'll have bad days. Some days you feel on cloud nine, other days you might feel like you want to bang your head against the wall. Um, so just be open to the different feelings that you're going to have based on the different twists and turns that a job search will really give to anybody, and trust the process. So focus on the progress that you are making, even if it's not necessarily linear. Like I said, some days you're going to feel like you're making huge progress, other days you're going to feel like you're not. But know that every step, whether it's a simple informational interview, whether you attend a networking event, whether you just enhance some of your skills, this is all going to bring you much closer to your goal. And so again, having a dream job is like a moving target. It may evolve over time as your career and personal life progresses. But again, I think the key is just staying positive. Know every day is a new day. Maintain a very clear sense in your mind of what you're working toward, and be willing to hear about all different opportunities. I think at the end of the day, finding your dream job is really a combination of self-discovery, continuous growth, taking care of yourself, and of course, resilience in the face of the challenges that you may face as you embark on a new opportunity. Okay.
All right,
Any
thanks, Melissa.
questions or thoughts on that? Okay. Actually, I found my current job by reaching out to the CEO on LinkedIn. Yep. So when I had my second layoff, instead of simply going on LinkedIn and refreshing the browser every couple of hours to see new job postings and applying that way, I created a list of target companies that I was interested in working at. And one of the target companies was a company called One Digital, and I did my research in terms of who the CEO is of the company, and I sent a note directly to the CEO on LinkedIn. And I thought one of two things is going to happen. She's either going to get back to me or she's not. And if she doesn't get back to me, at least I know I tried. Well, lo and behold, she did respond. And she said, and keep in mind too, there was no job posting. So I had no idea if the company was even hiring, but this was always a dream company of mine. And I thought, why not reach out to her? And lo and behold, she wrote me back and said, we're actually looking to build out our recruiting function. I really love your background, would love to have a conversation with you. And long story short, 2 weeks later, I had a job offer in my hand, and I've been at my job for 3.5 years. So when I coach job seekers, which is, I do have a coaching business, and one of the things I always suggest to them is that instead of being reactive in a job search, you need to be proactive. Instead of just seeing what job postings exist and then applying, write a list of your target companies, find out who the decision makers are on LinkedIn, and reach out to them directly. When I reached out to many, many different decision makers, some people didn't get back to me, and that's something I fully expected because not everyone is active on LinkedIn, nor was everyone perhaps interested in me. But I did have a few people that did reach out to me. And if I didn't take the approach of sending a note directly to the CEO of my company, there's no question I wouldn't have my job now because again, there was no job posting. I had no idea if the company was even hiring. So I think in today's very competitive job market, it's about being proactive in your search, networking as much as possible, and just never really taking your eye off the prize. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thanks for asking that. I appreciate the question.
Any final questions, folks? I think we're good for today.
Okay.
Thanks again, Melissa. It was great to hear from you.
My pleasure.
We're going to pass the mic over to Eric now with his presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I had prepared a couple of slides, but I'm also happy to just kind of be informal the way that others have. What do you think, John, or what do people prefer?
It's been pretty casual today. Let's continue on with that, I guess.
Sounds good. Yeah, so let me introduce myself. I'm Eric. John shared my bio in the intro, but I work as an executive coach now, but this is my fourth career. So I started off as a physics student, went to grad school, but then dropped out to become a software engineer. Spent 10 years as a software engineer and product manager across several startups, and then switched careers again to be on the business side of things, business strategy and operations, eventually building myself, working my way up to be the chief of staff of the search ads team, as you mentioned. And then 5 years ago, I left Google to become an executive coach. And so I wanted to talk today about crafting a career vision, which I most definitely did not do, at least not conventionally. I didn't set out 20 years ago, like, I want to be an executive coach in 20 years. I didn't even set out to be a chief of staff. It kind of happened by accident. And yet, along the way, I did have something I was navigating towards. I didn't quite know how to articulate it, but I knew at each step of the way, this is what I want to learn. This is interesting to me. This feels aligned with me. So I want to share that with you today, kind of my own thinking about how to navigate a complex career, because it's not the way it used to be, where you just like go join a company and you just work your way up the ladder. You can do that. It's not very effective because companies change, jobs change. You have to keep changing to match the volatile world that we live in. So I guess I'll start by saying, like, there's a quote I was going to share by a woman named Arlen Hamilton, who's a venture capitalist. And she says, you can't reach your goals if you don't know what they are. Seems so obvious, right? And yet how many of us are running through each day without ever thinking, like, why am I doing this? Where am I trying to get to? What's the goal? And what I've found in working with top executives, both at Google and as a coach, is the thing that separates the most effective executives is they are crystal clear on what's most important. And that clarity allows them to focus, to say, no, that's not part of my goal. That's not part of my goal. I know you want it, but that's not going to advance my most important mission this week, this month, this year. Steve Jobs once said, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. And that good ideas is important. It's not like saying no to stupid stuff. We've all gone past that. We're all too busy already just doing important good stuff. So you have to prioritize and say, what's most important? And that's true at work, and that's true in your career. By the way, do you notice how I just did the beat thing that Greg talked about? I'm using my fingers like he talked about. I'm paying attention. So as you think about what do you want your career to look like, I invite you to look back at your history. Take a moment to think about, like, what are some of the best experiences you've had at work? What are the work you're most proud of? What were the times in your career when you were excited to come to work each day? What was made it great for you? And just take a moment to think about that. What are these experiences? What are the patterns? What helped you be your best self at work during those times? And you might not be able to do that live because obviously there's a lot of pressure, but I want you to think about that exercise. Because if you look back, you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see what really stood out for you. For me, I realized that what I loved about work was helping other people succeed. And it was learning about a lot of things. You can see my bookshelf. I love reading. I love learning. At one point in my career, I called myself an unrepentant generalist. I wanted to do everything, and I wasn't sorry about it. That's my strength, is I'm very broad. Not really great at going deep. That's why I dropped out of my PhD program. So I want to be broad, and I want to help people. And for the first 10 or 15 years of my career, I was not doing that. I was trying to pick software engineer, where being maniacally focused on coding is an advantage, and I wasn't. But I've learned eventually, like, no, I need jobs where my breadth and my interest in helping others is an advantage, not a disadvantage. That's why I was great at being a chief of staff. That's why I'm great as an executive coach. So yeah, as you start crafting your dream job, what I do tell people is it's not about the title. It's not about, I want to be this title by this time on this day. No, it's much more about, like, what is the impact I want to have? What does my day-to-day look like? So I often lead people through an exercise like, what's an ideal day at work for you? And when I think to ask people about it, it's like, what are the things you do at work that energize you? You're like, oh yeah, I want to do more of that. And then what are the things you do at work that drain you, that make you exhausted? And what I tell people is, when you're navigating your career, if you just find jobs where you do a little more of the energizing work and a little less of the draining work each time, you're going to eventually find a job where you're great. Because if you're spending all day doing work you find energizing, you're going to be more effective. You're going to get more done because you're excited. You're going to have more energy to put into the work you want to do. So start to think about that. What does an ideal day at work look like? What are the energizing activities? How do I get rid of the draining activities? And what is the support system that helps you be your best self at work? One of the other things that was important for me in my career was, I'm not great at process and operations work. There's people that are great at it. For a long time, I thought I had to get better at it. In fact, I took one job in finance where my whole job was doing process and details and dotting I's and crossing T's. I was like, well, if I make it my whole job, I will take this weakness and I will get better at it. And it's true. I did it for a year and a half, and I did get better at it. I went from god-awful to below average. And I was working 100-hour weeks just to get to below average. And I burned myself out. That turned out to be a really dumb thing to do. Because there are people that could do the same amount of work it took me 100 hours to do, They did it in 30 hours and they loved it. Why am I trying to make myself compare to those people? That was a terrible idea. So I learned, just find one of those people and give them that work. They'll do it efficiently. They love doing it. And I can focus on the stuff I'm great at, which is the big picture, the broad stuff I talked about before. And then lastly, I'll say, like, what is the impact you want to have? You can call it meaning. You can call it purpose. What do you want? What is the legacy and substance you want to leave behind? When you can find a job that aligns what you do day to day with some sort of impact that is meaningful to you, that's going to provide you energy. That's going to help you remind you why you wake up each day doing what you do. I used to say to people that, like, the 3 things to think about when you're looking for a job are, what do you want to learn? What are the skills you're building in this job that will help you towards your long-term goal? Number 2, who are you going to work with? What's the team you work with? Who's your manager? Are you aligned with your manager on values, on what's important? Because if you're not, you're going to fight every day and you're going to be miserable. And I will tell you, I know, because I've been fired twice. Because if you're not aligned with your manager, it gets really hard to be effective. And number 3, what is the impact you want to have on a day-to-day basis? That could be the impact you want to have on the world, could be the impact you want to have on your team. And if you start to align all those 3 things, you're going to have a pretty great job. And those are not helpful in the traditional sense of, like, what job should I apply for? What company should I apply for? But they are helpful in navigating your career. To Melissa's point, this is where the networking is really helpful. As you start to get clear for yourself what you're looking for, talk to other people. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. Who are managers? Who are companies that are aligned with this? She shared how there was a company that she was excited to work for. She reached out to the CEO. The alignment was there and she got the job. That really happens. If you're excited about the mission and you reach out to people, they can see, to Greg's point about the nonverbal language, they see your excitement. They see your enthusiasm. They're like, this is not just a job for them. This is important to them. They want to do it. So with that clarity for yourself on what you're looking for in a job, you can start networking. You start looking for it by asking people, this is what I want. Help me find it. So that's my idea. That's what I wanted to share with you today. Get clear about where you are trying to go. Can't get where you're trying to go unless you have an idea of what that is. But you may not be able to get there directly. You're going to take steps one direction and another direction. I like to compare it to, like, hiking up a mountain. You can see the top of the mountain, but you don't necessarily go straight up the mountain directly in a straight line. You're going to take a few steps here, a few steps there, and, oh, that doesn't look right. Let me try another way. Like my experience with finance. So like, oh, that didn't work for me. Those are definitely steps in the wrong direction. Was it a waste? No, I learned about myself. I'm like, that was a terrible idea. I learned from the experience not to do that again. There's no such thing as a wrong step. Every step is a learning process. So with the mountain in mind and treating each step as a learning process, that's how I recommend you navigate your career. So I'll shut up. Love to hear questions, thoughts. Please share. Crickets. Is anybody still here?
Any questions for Eric, guys? Is there any assessments you took as part of your, like, exploratory journey, or like what did you do to sort of figure out what skills were your best? I mean, people have a general idea of what they're good at, but like I did Colby, for example,
I never found those assessments to be helpful. For me, it was most helpful to actually read the feedback in my performance assessments. And the thing that most people do is they skip over the stuff they're good at. They skip over the positive feedback, go straight to what can I work on? And we miss that, like, maybe we should work on our strengths and turn them into more of our strengths instead of just working on what we're weak on. That was a mistake I made with that finance job. Because my manager at the time told me, these are the things you're great at. And these are the things you need to work on. And I'm like, oh, I'll go work on the stuff I need to work on instead of investing more in my strengths. And it's funny because, like, that manager the first time I worked for, he became my manager in our first performance evaluation. She's like, Eric, you know what you're great at? Like, you're the person everybody on this team goes to when they're stuck and they don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I ignored it. I threw it away. 10 years later, I'm a coach where my job is to help people when they're stuck and get them unstuck. And I'm great at it. I'm like, I could have gotten there a lot faster if I just listened to the feedback he gave me. So, like, that might be some, that would be something I would ask people to consider. Is like, we don't recognize what our superpowers are because it comes easily to us. And so asking people like, hey, what's my superpower? What makes me special? And ask this of coworkers, people that I've worked with, of friends, of family. Like, that's I would find that more valuable than like the assessments, because that's very generic. Whereas like people that know you are like, this is the thing that you do that other people don't.
Nice. All right. Well, any last questions, folks? Well, thanks a lot, Eric, for your take on that. It's something we all go through, but we don't really take the time to think about, maybe, And I think sometimes we get caught up in the chasing of, oh, I got bills to pay, so take the job, and we don't take time to think about, oh, what is this doing to my career, or what is this doing to, my progression, So it's good to maybe take some time. If you have an extended layoff, you have the time to do this, right? You have the time to do some self-reflection, right? So
yeah, I mean, we're so busy these days. There's always too much work to do. So people are like, I don't have time to reflect. But we can waste years by not actually reflecting, because we're not building a story for our career. We're not building to something bigger. And taking the time to reflect is seems like we don't have time for it, but I guess one way to think about it is like, if you're going the wrong direction, pushing harder and going faster in the wrong direction is not going to get you anyplace helpful. And stopping to say like, wait, which way am I going, is far more useful than just working harder and pushing harder into the wrong direction. So I mean, you don't have to do this every day, but like a couple times a year, just taking an hour to think about like, where do I want to go with my career? Is this still working for me? Is this still moving me in the direction I want to go? I find that just so valuable.
yeah, it makes sense. Well, I appreciate your outlook on that, and I think we'll wrap it up for tonight.
Great. Thanks for inviting me, John.
Yeah, it was great to hear from you, and I appreciate it. And thanks also to Melissa and Greg. I think they may have logged off. But thanks everyone for coming today, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Eric.